So Cece, I feel like you're on this like path at the moment of like, you've been telling me you've been on some retreat where you've like locked your phone away and you've had some time out on your own, and you seem to be on some sort of health kick, like literally everything this woman brings in a cup or in a bowl or on a plate, it's green and does not look nice.
The thing is, when you say that, I feel pressured to be really healthy now, and I'm like, this is just a segment of life. I feel like
I want to drag you down with me back to like the chocolate and the cookies and the crisps.
Oh, wait till the weekend. This is Monday to Friday.
But I feel like, is this part of like, I don't know, you trying to feel better about yourself and in a way of like inside out? Or?
Yeah, definitely. That's kind of how I've always visualized it, is like working from within to then present out, because I think you can get all these exterior things which are temporary fixes to whatever people are going through. So I'm just, I guess, figuring out my way again, because I have moments in life where I'm really great, I'm really happy, and then I have these like, I think I need to do something different, and I'm having a at the moment. So has meant I have lots of green tea.
Do you think any of that comes down to like knowing your self-worth? Like, you know, because sometimes I feel like with relationships and things like that, I think sometimes you can be with someone and you kind of lose yourself. And I think with that, you lose your self-worth because you kind of put too much of yourself into somebody.
Bang on, yeah.
And then I think sometimes when you're single, that's a really great time to find
Figure it all out.
Yeah, find yourself and all of that. But then sometimes maybe do you get a bit lost along the way when you're dating people that you feel like are not worth your time? Or
yeah, I think that's the battle I have constantly, is because I end up get into a relationship and then it fails, so then I have to sort of fix myself, and then I'm sort of fixed as such to a degree. You meet someone else and then it's like the repetitive pattern. So I think, yeah, I've probably been doing this for a few years now, but what I've found is the more I invest in me and the more time that I spend after the relationship has ended alone, and it sounds so wanky, but like looking within, there's like a moment that I could be doing anything, running along the beach, or that sounds really fancy.
yeah, no, it really does.
Walking along the road or doing something, and I'll have that moment of like, I've just figured it out. And I have light bulb moments now, whereas when I'm like too in it and too, let's jump into the next relationship, let's go straight away to a rebound, I'm not figuring out what I need. I'm just thinking, let's get away from whatever I've just been through. So I feel like I have not answered your question at all.
No, I feel like you really did like answer my question.
Okay.
But I think we're all kind of on a journey. Like, I know I am on like knowing my self-worth, and I think you know it more in different situations than others. And some people might feel less worthy in relationships or in a workplace or in friendships or within themselves. And I go through stages where I feel good and bad in those different things. And I think, again, like you say, it's like that self-discovery and from the inside out.
I love that, because I think it's like good to remember that it's not always high, and we can look at people on Instagram, right, and we can think, wow, look how great their life is, look how fabulous everything is, but we're all human and we all have shit, we all have stuff, and everyone's stuff is different, but it doesn't matter. I might break my nail and I think it's the worst thing in the world, you might break it and you think actually it's not that bad, but it's all we all have our thing, and it's how we manage it. Like, we're normal, we're human, we fuck up, we repair, and then we do it again. And I guess that's just what life is, right?
Yay!
Yay! And that's the end of the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We're going to lift you up. Well,
Wow.
I know there are two women here that hopefully will lift us up.
They're going to turn this around. No pressure, guys.
They know all about knowing their self-worth and figuring themselves out. Do you want to introduce yourself, ladies?
Hi.
Hi.
So my name is Rebecca Archer, and I began to realise in life that I am an oversharer. That is
I hear that.
Yeah, same.
a label that was regularly attributed to me. So I decided, why not make a career out of it and become an oversharing writer.
Oh, brilliant.
So that's what I've done, and I am just about to publish my very first poetry book called Heartbreak, which explores a decade of being single and what I have learned. I've also been very prolific on the dating apps during that time. So it kind of looks at themes in modern day dating that I've discovered while having been dating for the last 10 years.
Okay.
Very nice.
Interesting.
Next.
So my name's Susannah Shakespeare, and
Is that really your last name?
Yeah, and I
Ooh.
wrote a book called The Girl Who Dated Herself. Rebecca and I met at an event, and I told her about the book, which she then read and reached out to me and said she was very inspired by it and she wanted to write herself. So I've kind of mentored her a bit, and we've become great friends.
We always like to ask our guests the same questions. So I'm wondering what your specific icks are in a relationship.
Toilet seats left up.
Oh, she
Went
knew straight
straight in
away
there.
there. Straight in,
Yeah.
Susanna.
And
what
what
about you?
So my biggest ick is men that write, I am looking for a woman who doesn't take herself too seriously.
I see that very
Because,
often.
yeah, I take myself very seriously. Like, I take my happiness very seriously. I take my pleasure very seriously. And so should you if you want to be in a relationship with me.
Yeah,
So,
I agree with that. Like, what does that actually mean? Like, what do you want? You just want to laughs all the time?
Well, they just
Like-
don't want someone that's got a fucking opinion. That's what it means.
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, you're
That
bang
really
on.
pissed me off.
No, I know. Yeah. I agree.
Personality not required.
Yeah.
So what about green flags then?
I've recently read Attached, the psychology book.
yeah.
It's changed my life. And writing my book and going to therapy has made me realise I've got an anxious attachment style. And I
Okay.
used to always be attached to very emotionally unavailable men, like the avoidant.
The avoidance.
Yeah.
And so now, if a man says to me, like, he's open to things, he's open to seeing where things go, that is a green flag to me.
If he was to say, like, if you asked him, is he looking for a relationship or for fun? Do you ask that question or?
I think as women, there are those pressures on our biological clocks, which are particularly drummed into us as we reach 35. And I feel like I'm at the stage in my life where I'm trying to work out whether maybe I would like children one day. And so I don't have time to mess about with these fuckboys, so to speak, that want to waste 6 months of my life, because it's very easy to get into these sort of situationships where you are just kind of repeating the same cycle of an anxious person dating an avoidant man. So yeah, I think what I am going to be really specific about when I date again is, what are you looking for? Are you looking for something serious? And that used to give me the ick.
It used to
because-
give me the ick as well. Yeah.
What, asking it or being asked?
Asking it. Being asked, I was like, fuck yeah, this guy's serious.
Yeah.
But asking it, I'm like, you want a relationship or not? Like, I would shy away from it, but now I just fucking
My friend
ask.
wants to know.
Yeah, my friend over there in the corner said.
But also, I'll be honest with you, it wasn't just, I remember going on a date with this man once, and he said, I'm actually looking for something really, I'm looking to settle down. I ran away. I was terrified of this situation because I was so used to these emotionally unavailable men that when someone literally was like, yeah, let's be in a relationship, I thought, what's wrong with him? Why does he want to be in a relationship with me? There must be something
Why do you
serious.
know what you want?
And yeah, it just made me realise that if you attract emotionally unavailable men, often it's because you're emotionally unavailable at some level yourself. And I certainly was, because I felt so uncomfortable around those conversations about what is this? Where is it going? And I think that comes down to if you've been hurt in the past, particularly like dating apps, there's so much ghosting that happens. And so you kind of get used to that happening and you start to predict that it's going to happen again. And I wrote in my book that I became a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy because I started always dating men that were quite emotionally unavailable, because then I knew when they left, they were gone. And I was expecting that, which is quite, get out a little violin situation. But
I can tell you, no, honestly, everything you're saying, I completely relate to and probably going through it myself. What about you? Green flags.
Green red, I would say, use of social media. I find somebody who's constantly sharing their life on social media less attractive than somebody who isn't. I think relationships are very private, and I think the age of social media has made everybody kind of broadcast everything about their life on social media. So that both gives people something they feel they have to live up to. So you're constantly projecting your own life against somebody else's, which is only ever the highlights anyway. They don't share the real stuff. So I think somebody who doesn't do that, who maybe just uses it professionally, occasionally, has days when they don't post anything, is more attractive than somebody who's like sharing constantly all day, everything they do. because it feels a little bit of a fantasy world.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us about where you were at when everything was going on, your story.
So I got a notification from Tinder and it came up as like this big celebration on my phone. You know, like there was actual bits of confetti on my phone screen and it said, "Congratulations, you've been liked by 25,000 men on Tinder."
Wow.
Which took me aback, I'm not going to lie. But I honestly found that the most depressing statistic I've ever read in my entire life. Because at the time, I'd just been going from one situationship into another situationship into another situationship for the last 10 years.
Was this after being in a relationship or not?
I had been in a relationship for about 2 years and I thought that was going to end in marriage and kids. You know, we'd had those big conversations and
how would you met him?
in real life on a
wow.
boat in Australia. In the Whitsundays, which is actually one of those really beautiful honeymoon destinations. And I'm probably the only person that's ever got seasick in the Whitsundays because it's literally the most stillest water.
Right.
And we met when I was vomiting over the side of a boat and he held my hair back. And so that was, you know, the start of a very unromantic love story. But I had built this idea in my head that was the end. You know, I'd met this man. It seemed it was going very well, and then it just ended very abruptly without any explanation as to why the relationship ended.
What, he broke up with you out of the blue?
Yeah, and then there was no further explanation as to why that had happened. I literally never saw him ever again.
You never heard from him again? So he
No.
broke up with you in person?
Yes, but he sent me a text message that was ended kind regards. He asked me to go and get my
Kind
belongings
regards.
from his apartment, and it said kind regards at the end of it. And that's actually a poem in my book
What
called
the
Kind
fuck?
Regards, yeah. And that's why I
Did he start with dear?
Do you know what? I can't actually remember. It probably did begin, "Dear Rebecca."
What was he like? What kind of guy was he? Was he like really well spoken?
No, he never sent me a message.
Do you think he met
Fucking
someone else?
kidding me?
Or?
Well, potentially, yes, because he was in a relationship quite quickly after that. So, yeah.
Kind regards. Fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
But you know what? I look back at that happened when I was 25. I'm going to be 35 this year. So it's been 10 years, which feels quite symbolic to me. If he hadn't have broken me, I would have quite happily have just kind of bumbled along and not really ever learned anything about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's only when I stepped out of that relationship that I realised what a muted version of myself I was in that relationship. I was such a people pleaser. Like, if he did something that upset me, I would never question it or challenge the behaviour. I would just accept it because I was so scared that the relationship was going to end. Well, the relationship ended anyway.
Yeah.
So I might as well have been my own person. It sounds cheesy, but honestly, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because since then, I've learnt so much about myself and how much love I can bring to myself. I've travelled a lot on my own as well, which has been really life-changing for me. A few years ago, I won a holiday to the Maldives on Instagram for 2 people. And I was very, very single at the time when I won this holiday to the Maldives. And I remember feeling so much pressure that I had to take a romantic partner with me because the Maldives, like, you think it's this exclusive place that only like honeymoon couples can go. And I couldn't quite get my head around the fact that maybe I could go to the Maldives with a friend. So I had a time limit on the voucher for when I could go on this like luxury holiday to the Maldives, and it was a year. So I thought 6 months. Initially I thought 6 months I'm going to try and find somebody, and I put it on my dating app profile.
Oh my God.
Potentially looking for a man to take to the Maldives with me. Well, like, that didn't go down very well, actually. Most men were terrified about the thought of like what it would mean if they were to go with me on to the Maldives. And even like people I was dating quite seriously, even they were like, well, it's been 3 months now. What does this mean, Rebecca? Does this mean that we should go to the Maldives together? And what would it mean if we did go to the Maldives together? Would that mean that we'd have to get engaged? And like just the crazy thoughts going on in their heads. And so it got to the 6-month point and I said, sod this, I'm taking my best friend. And off we went to the Maldives together. and we had a bloody whale of a time. It was amazing. It was then that I realised that paradise is not the unique space where couples can go. Because we were single, the resort, honestly, they treated us like two princesses. I said to them, no rose petals on the bed, please. Like, none of that. Instead, like, I went into the room and they'd like lit incense for us. And they said, all the excursions that we offer on the island, they were like, because you've not got anything else to do. Because that's what I thought. I thought, what do you do in the Maldives if you're not having sex all day? Like, what do you actually do there?
I just got back from the Maldives and I can tell you there was no sex. But we had lots to do. Cece, have you ever been on holiday on your own then?
I go on holiday on my own all the time.
Do you?
I think my first trip was just before the lockdown started, and I had all the same thoughts as you. I was like, how do I do this? My main thing was eating alone. I just thought, how can I sit in a restaurant and just like people staring? I thought everyone would be looking at me thinking, why is she on her own? What's she gone through? And it was, I think there's something that happens in your 30s that we don't really talk about it, but then I guess my close friends do, but your friendship circles change, everything changes. You know, if you're not attached or if you're not with children, you get moved to the side a little bit, and it's not intentional. It's just that everybody's finding their flow, their priorities have changed, they're now pregnant or they're having a baby, and your Thursday night fancy a glass of wine girls disappears. So you have to either make new friends or you have to go in with what you were saying, you know, why not do it now by yourself? And I was always waiting for someone to go on holiday with, always waiting, are you free yet? Are you free now? Oh, I can't now, my baby's poorly, or something has happened, or I've got into a relationship and I'd rather go with my boyfriend. So fuck it, I'll just go on my own. I will say going away with like a partner or friends especially is hilarious. It's like,
I was going to say, I'd love to go to the Maldives with my best mate.
Yeah, like with it's there's nothing quite like it. But if you're in a bad relationship, my solo holidays have been brilliant anyway, and I've always got something from them. Like, it's like that whole like light bulb moment. But my relationship holidays, we just end up arguing. So I'm like, I wish I'd bloody gone on my own now.
I was going to say, when you're sitting there in the restaurant on your own, you think everybody's staring at you. They're not thinking that poor sod on her own. No. They're thinking, oh God, I'd love to be on my own. I'd love to be without him right now.
People watching, like I watch couples, and I find that fascinating. I love body language. And seeing them like I remember in Croatia, you know, in the morning they were like holding hands, and by the evening they're just like, fuck off. You know, they're like eating their food. And I'm like, they've definitely had a Barney. I want to know what it's about. I want to ask the girl. But obviously you can't, and it's brilliant. So I don't mind it, but it took a lot to go like that first. And that first holiday is fucking hard.
I think it's because we're kind of taught not to do anything on our own, though. Like, my mum always used to work abroad, and I remember even as being young and saying, well, who do you eat dinner with? And she'd be like, well, I go to a restaurant and I sit on my own. And that used to really blow my mind, even as a kid. And, you know, people that go to cinema on their own, I've always thought it's weird. And then I went to New York to do this acting course on my own for 2 weeks, and I didn't know anyone, and they were all students. I didn't really fit in. And I was like, well, I can either go and sit in my room and do nothing, or I can go to the theatre, which I absolutely love. And so I did. And this was only a few years ago now. It must have been just before lockdown. And I went to theatre on my own the first time, and I got chatting to like an older couple next to me who were really fascinating. I got the best seat in the house because it was like the only one on its own. I got it cheap. And then after that, I went to so many shows on my own after that while I was there. And I was like, it's ridiculous how we have these thoughts of that we can't do something alone. Or you've got to do something as a couple. You've got to do something with someone. And actually, there's something so freeing in it, that realisation that actually I'm all right on my own.
I think it's a real British thing, actually, because you experienced that in New York. When I lived in LA, it was easier. When I lived in Paris, it was easier. It's really a British thing that you feel like you're being judged. And I don't know if it's because you're on your home
We're so
turf,
self-aware as well.
or you think, but somebody
think
might
it's home
know
turf.
me.
I think you're right.
And when you're in a foreign country, you can reinvent yourself. And you can be who you want, and you can make up a little story about yourself in your head. You know, I'm just this glamorous single person, or you know.
I think it's London. Maybe not. I could maybe do it up north, but in London,
Really? Because there's so many people like not from England in London. Like this, and everyone's so
cafes.
busy. And
I think in my head, I'm thinking like a Friday and a Saturday night. Like with the nights that all my friends are with their children, there's no way I'm going out to a bar on my own. I'd rather go on holiday on my own than go to a bar in London in, say, Clapham on my own.
that's fair though.
Is it? Is it fair?
Well, I think it is, but it's probably not.
Is it? Is
You
it fair?
get hit on as well when you go to a bar. Like if you're a single woman on your own, you'll get some sort of leery guy coming over and going, "All right, darling, you're on
Well,
your
maybe
own."
that's where I'm going wrong.
Mate, get yourself in there.
Right?
You don't want those guys. Trust me.
But that's another thing.
Yeah.
Like you are like it's different. It's weird, isn't it? That
Do you
it's in
talk to the
UK?
staff when you go on holiday? Do you like get chatting to the waiters and the hotel
Depends
staff?
on my
when
mood.
you're on your
Like
own?
sometimes I just
Yeah.
want to switch off
Yeah.
because work is so mad that it's quite nice just to not have to talk to anyone and host. You know, you just read your book or just do you. So yeah, but then sometimes I'm like I want some attention. Right, well, who can I talk to today? And then I'll speak to the pool man. And then suddenly, then he gets the wrong idea. So you're like, right, fuck that one. And not literally, like.
I wish you had.
No. Frankie, bathroom break? Do you know what? After that, I think I'm going to book another holiday. And I am actually going to do this bar drinking. I'm going to try.
You're not.
Do you know what I'll do?
I don't believe you for a
Okay, how about this then? What if I go to the pub at 2 p.m. on a Friday
Doesn't count.
and then leave at 3?
It's got to be on like a Thursday. Isn't Thursday the big night out?
Yeah,
On a
go on.
Thursday night, 8
What
p.m. in a pub on your own.
Oh.
I wouldn't do that to you. Although I would really like to go on holiday on my own.
Yeah, I would advise that. That
Yeah.
is.
Wayne, if you're listening, I'll see you once I'm back from Ibiza in 7 days. So what about you then, Susannah? You've written a book called The Girl Who Dated Herself, which is a pretty interesting title. Like, what got you to that point?
Well, I was living in Los Angeles, and as I'm a writer by profession. I was working kind of behind the scenes on a lot of TV and film scripts, doing like dialogue polishes and stuff. And I'd been in 3 long-term relationships with kind of a few short-term disasters in between. And I was definitely that person who's scared to be single. I judged myself on the idea of it. And after the one relationship broke down, he used that, that trite line on me, "Oh, it's not you, it's me." I thought, actually, maybe it's me. And so I just took a pledge to date myself for a year and like swear off all relationships. But rather than just be single, I made myself take myself out on dates.
Brilliant.
And write myself a Valentine's card and buy myself flowers and wrap myself presents for Christmas and these crazy things.
Were you going to events? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, I would go to the cinema. I think one of my favourite dates was taking myself to a classical concert because it was quite fancy in Pasadena. It was I do remember it was the LA Symphony Orchestra. They were playing a Beethoven symphony, and that's the kind. Going to a movie or a theatre or something on your own, it's a bit more cash.
Yeah.
But this was a fancy
get dressed
thing,
up
and
on your
I
own.
did. I got dressed up in a cocktail dress with heels and makeup.
Oh,
I went
love that.
and got a glass of champagne, and I just stood around. And that is one of those times when I did feel people were staring at me because I was the only person alone. Again, I got a really good seat. Like there was a one single seat, and it was like great seat. I felt a little awkward, but I enjoyed it. And then one of the funniest stories in the book is when I took myself dancing. I was the kid at school who, the school disco, begging people to dance with me because I love dancing.
Oh.
And, at that, when you're that age and disco music, you don't dance on your own. You'd look ridiculous. So you've got to find somebody to dance with. I didn't care if it was a boy, a girl, a group, a teacher, and somebody's dad. Like, come and that's funny. I love this one. And then I hit the tail end of the sort of rave scene in the late 90s, and I loved rave music simply because, you know, people were off their tits and nobody cared.
Yeah.
So you could get in the middle of it and just dance on your own.
Yeah.
So I really loved that. But then when I was in LA doing this thing, I was doing this dating myself. I thought, well, I've got to take myself. How can I was looking to challenge myself. So I went to a salsa club and I got, well, you know, the men were coming up, come on, darling, come dance with me. I was like, no, just on my own. And I was salsa dancing on my own. And I'm sure I looked ridiculous, but I just loved it because it was the epitome of how can I do something that you would never imagine somebody would do on their own. I was just looking for that sort of real extra challenge. And I think what I got out of all of that was the importance of dating, making something a date. It doesn't matter if it's romantic, if it's a friendship, if it's on your own. It's calling something like I'm going on a date with myself, or I'm going on a date with my partner, or I'm going on a date with somebody new. As long as you call it a date and don't have expectations necessarily beyond it, make it something special for what it is, for that night or that occasion or whatever.
So you're just putting on that particular moment, not like it could be a date leading into da-da-da-da-da.
Exactly.
Yeah, I hear you.
So dial down those expectations and let everything else come afterwards or around it. But just say, right, that moment is a date and just enjoy it for what it is, whether it's, like I say, by yourself or with a friend.
How long did it take for you to feel comfortable? You know, when you first started it, when did you kind of start to think, you know what, I actually enjoy this now?
Well, I liken the book to a 3-act movie. You know, I was working in that industry, so I knew how to structure it. So I used a little artistic license, you know. And the first third of it was fun, because it's like that first bit in a relationship where you're like, oh, I like this person. This is so cool. She bought me such a great present, just what I wanted. And then I got a bit sick of myself. And I was like, oh, God, you know, I just think the same old thing again and again. I'm bored of myself. So I went into that slump that you go in. In a relationship, you can then break up with somebody. When you're dating yourself, you can't. I call it like an arranged marriage. It's kind of stuck with yourself. So you've got to learn to love yourself. So it was a different level of love. It was after that honeymoon period, it was a different level of love. It was actually having to force myself. And that's when all the ugly stuff came out. You know? And then once that came out and I was like, right, I've got to face this shit. That's when I went into the sort of last third of it where I genuinely started to have a relationship with myself, I suppose, and feel that self-worth, bringing it back to what you were saying at the beginning, knowing that I'm enough. Because I was also conned by that, I think lots of us were, that line in the Jerry Maguire movie, you complete me. And so you hear that line and you're like, where's the person who's going to complete me? I need completing. I'm not enough by myself. And you get caught up in that.
Yeah.
And I think there's one thing you can't get from anyone else, and that is validation. You have to validate yourself before you can then share yourself with someone else. It doesn't mean it's always going to be, you know, a bed of roses, but you've got to have that base. But to answer your question more specifically, I think, like any relationship now, I can have great dates with myself. I can have bad dates with myself. I've good days and bad days. Days when I think I'm ace. Days when I just want to like dig a hole, bury myself and stay down there for 4 months, you know? So yeah, I think it just reflects life really. Yeah.
And after that year, what was it, if you dated since? So obviously you dated yourself, and if you dated other people after that year?
Yeah.
And what was that like? Was that like,
Better.
It like, did you notice a huge difference? Like, God, this feels different to the previous year. Like, I've learned something. I'm doing it differently, choosing different types of people.
I wasn't choosing different types of people necessarily to begin with. I think it took me a while to choose better people. Yeah. Because I think I was still making too many decisions based on kind of face values. Yeah. Being a bit fickle.
She's working on that with me. I'm in that phase.
But I handled myself differently. So I wasn't, because I didn't have that neediness, I could let go more easily.
Yes.
I could say, no, this isn't working for me. And I didn't feel I had that power before because I was feeling like
it's
I
more
had
of a
that
choose
hold.
me, isn't it, mindset, rather than actually I'm choosing not to be with you.
And also learning that everybody has their flaws and you can't be perfect for everyone. You're not just... there was that horrible, she's a 9, she's an 8, the ranking of women that I think men used to do, like there's movies about it and stuff. Well, somebody's 4 might be somebody else's 9, and somebody's 9 might be somebody else's 4, And it is, to be really crass, what's on the inside that counts. There is absolutely nothing, I learned, nothing that you can do to your outside that can make you happy on the inside. It has to come from the inside first. And that's another thing I learned in Hollywood, is watching people like starve themselves to a size that they thought would make them happy because it got that person success or this person some success, and end up utterly miserable and ill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like both of you have been on this, like, an incredible journey. You took a year out, you took your 4 years to do your therapy, and that is what I would say a lot of people don't do. And that's where we're on this journey of like, why can't I find my person? Because we're looking for our person. It's like, what about this that's, in front of us? So if you could say, like, what would be the most beneficial thing you've done? I mean, is it the most obvious thing that you did your 4 years of therapy and you did your year off? Would that be it? Or is there anything else that you'd say, try this because it will work for you, or it's worked for me?
There's a few things. The first thing that I have learned in therapy, which the therapy was a real key point for me. And I think what I've learned recently is that therapy, there's less of a stigma about it. When I first started therapy, I didn't tell anybody apart from my family, and my family went, "You don't need therapy," and they were really confused as to what. And I was like, "No, I'm just trying to learn about why I keep building these bad relationships. There must be something that I'm doing." And the key thing that I learned in therapy is that chemistry is not compatibility, and that's one thing that dating apps kind of encourage, is that you're encouraged to choose somebody based on their physical attraction, on their picture. And actually, one thing I learned in therapy too is that those butterflies that you feel in your stomach, that's anxiety. That doesn't mean you're supposed to be with that person. If you've got all these butterflies in your stomach, it's your nervous system saying, I don't feel safe. I feel like on edge. Like, is this person going to turn up on the date? Like, after you've had the date, am I ever going to hear from him again?
But there is a difference, right, between anxiety and butterflies. Anxiety is like, oh, my stomach, like, there's a difference. Whereas butterflies are like, I'm excited. I'm going on a fucking date tonight. Like, that is, there's no smiles with anxiety. There's smiles with butterflies.
Yeah, that is very true. What I found is that I was just kind of getting into these situationships where they were quite ambiguous. And so don't get me wrong, they would be so exciting and I would be happy and I would have an amazing time on all these dates. But then there would be no long-term conversations about where it was going.
I know what you're saying. Yeah. I do. I get it. That sort of that feeling after, like, is he going to call the next day? Like, should I text him or should he text me? Like, oh my God, it's the next morning, I haven't heard anything. And then you go into that mode of like, this isn't butterflies. This is full on anxiety. Yeah. Which we could mistake for like, oh, it's just because I like him. That's what it is. It's not anxiety. It's because I like him. Yeah. Oh, I'm alive. And actually, it's, I think everyone should always follow up after a date. And what about you? What would you say yours?
My big one is, as we were talking about before, social media and the digital world. We have all massively overdosed on social media and digital communications. We're not digital, we're human. And I liken it to cake. If you were to eat cake every time you were on social media, you'd be very, very ill. So I think dialing down that digital and staying off the apps and staying off social media, and following your life and doing something, joining a choir, going skydiving, getting into a sport, watching live sport, doing something where you're going to meet people who've got a similar interest to you. That's how people used to meet people in the old days, not kind of like scrolling through a catalogue of pictures that are mostly
It's mad, isn't it, when you
mostly
think
like
about it like that?
airbrushed. Put your phone down, turn it off, put it in a drawer and go out and do stuff. Go on a walk, go to a bar, even if going to a bar on your own
Not
in Clapham.
on my own.
Well, then go somewhere else, go to another place, go to Liverpool. Go somewhere where you feel, or Manchester, go somewhere where you would feel kind of okay. And again, treat that, don't lower your expectations. Just treat something like a great night out, a great date, a great occasion. And yes, everybody should get back to you after a date. But if he doesn't, never mind, move on. Don't linger over it.
Yeah.
Just kind of get back into the moment and do it again with somebody right. Write them off and
I love
keep
the
on going.
expectations thing, because I think that's where a lot of the single women that I speak to and myself is where we go wrong, is where, I'll sit next to somebody on the tube and I think, he might be my one. He could be. We don't even fucking look at each other. He gets off and I'm like, there he goes.
There it's
There's
gone.
another one. Yeah. And
Bye, my love.
everyone I interact with, I'm like, maybe it's him. He's not quite right in this, that, and the other, but maybe it could be him. And I've gone on a tangent on my own head of like, we're now married and we haven't even looked at each other. Well, ladies,
I'd love that.
thank you so much. That has been, you have like opened my mind. I love all this kind of chat.
Cece's had a light bulb moment.
Yeah,
today.
more light bulbs. I'm going to go for another walk. I'm going to go to a bar in Clapham and book another holiday.
I don't believe you about the bar in
No,
Clapham,
I
but
don't
I'll
think
give you the other
myself.
stuff.
Maybe I'll do it by the end of the year. That'll
Yeah.
be my one tick.
Well, thank you so much, guys. It was
been
lovely.
great. Thanks for listening, guys. And while you're at it, I know you've got your phones open. So you see that little follow button, hit it now. And whilst you're there, you might as well leave us a really nice review.
From Podimo and 2020, this has been First Dates the podcast, hosted by me, Frankie Bridge.
And me, Cece Coleman.
The producers are Blondine Hogue and Fionn Lewis.
The video producer is Rob Walsh. The executive producers for Podimo are Jake Chudnow and Matt White. The executive producer for 2020 is Martin Tricky.
Special thanks to Bruna Pias, Kendra Steve and Fatima Patea.
For ad-free episodes, subscribe to Podimo UK on Apple Podcasts.